Welcome to Filament's Folly. Today we're going to make a skull octopus holder. Now this is something I've wanted since I got a 3D printer, so I thought I'd bring along you guys with the journey today. Timestamps are below as well. Let's get started making this magnificently creepy piece of art. Okay, so I've already built the phone at scale here by measuring my phone, and I kind of held it up to figure out what angle I wanted it at, and that's what that stick is at the bottom, just kind of helping me judge the angle. So we're starting out with a sphere here, and this is going to be the basis for our skull. So I'm going to bring it into sculpt mode, and I'm just going to do a really rough sculpt here. So I've got Dantapo on, and I'm just going to kind of rough out the shape of a human skull. We're not doing a lot of detail here. This is mainly just to go ahead and figure out scale and things like that. We don't want to spend too much time working on this to find out that all that effort we put into there will now be destroyed because it's at the wrong size or the wrong angle. Okay, so now that we've got that done, let's bring it back into object mode and start placing it. Now you may want to rotate stuff like this just a little until we get it quite right. So now I'm going to go ahead and start with the tentacles. Now for this I'm going to be using a cylinder, and I'm going to go into edit mode and start extruding the top face out, shrinking it, and then rotating it so that way it can move. And I'm also going to put a subdivision surface modifier on there so that way it looks smooth. Now, I could do this in sculpt mode, but this gives me a lot more freedom for repositioning, which is really important later because I'm going to duplicate this tentacle for all the other tentacles. So now you can see here I'm back in edit mode and I'm just moving that, and it's so much easier than it would be if this was sculpted. It also keeps the poly count lower, which is nice. So here I am duplicating it a couple times for the front tentacles and just swapping them around, and then I can go back through in edit mode again and edit them just like we had. Now I can see this isn't completely flat at the bottom. That's going to be fine because we're going to boolean it out. Now I kind of did a quick jump here to when they were all finished just because I don't think you want to see me keep doing that part over and over again. So now I'm going into the skull itself, and I'm going to start doing a lot more of the detail work now that we've got all the proportions for all the pieces finished. So I'm going to basically go from large polys to small polys just to slowly add detail to keep the model count lower. You don't want it to get too large too quickly, or it can be hard, especially for older computers. Most of the tools I use here are the snake hook tool, inflate, deflate, and the crease tool. Okay, so now we're going to create the teeth. So for this we're going to be using just a cube like we've done before, and then using loop cuts to kind of shape it. Now I have a human skull here at my desk, which I was using for reference on this. And one of the things I noticed that I haven't done in my previous skulls is the teeth are never even. I usually kind of just mirror them out, and this time I decided to just copy it and edit each tooth individually, just to give it that kind of like more unique human look. We're not perfect, created in machines, so I'm going to speed it up here a bit just to create the rest of these. Now I am going to mirror it off to the other side when I'm done, but then I'm going to rotate the teeth all separately. Okay, so now we're going back into sculpt mode, and I'm using the inflate brush here. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, the inflate brush and the snake hook tool, basically to push up the jaw or the roof of the mouth and then start building out that almost like gum-like area you have in the jaw to hold the teeth in. Okay, so now we're going in here and we're going to work on the fall off, and that's going to allow us to make those like donut shaped suckers. And basically we're going to use this on the inflate brush, and that's going to create these suction cups, and you just scale it up with making your brush larger as you go down, and that's basically all you have to do. And that's all I did for all of these, so I'm only going to be doing one tentacle here just to try to keep the video length down. Okay, so now those are done. I'm going to add a sphere at the bottom to kind of let all these tentacles join together. And that's going to kind of be the base of the front part we're printing. And then we're going to boolean everything off. So the bottom of the skull, the bottom of the tentacles, and we boolean the skull out of that combined shape. Now I'm using the teeth to boolean out the areas in the tentacles, and then using the deflate brush just to kind of push away more space. You really won't notice that, it'll be kind of typed in there. So I've already filled and primed this with wood filler and spray filler, and now I'm just putting on a base coat of primer here. You didn't really need to do primer, but I like to do white primer for these. As you can see here in the corners and stuff, what I used. Now I'm going back in with my airbrush now that that's dry, and I'm just doing a really quick base coat of red. And I'm using basic paints. I'm going to try to put all my paints up in the corner that I'm using like I did last time. I think that was kind of a nice touch. Everything here is printed with a 20% fill, by the way. And now I'm going back in with a second coat. For the skull, I'm going to go ahead and use like a white base with a little bit of black and a little bit of yellow, a little bit of blue, and a little bit of red in white. And then I'm just going to go ahead and kind of intensify those colors, just add a little bit more of them to go build up that base color. And now we're going to go ahead and start dappling on the color. Now I wanted a kind of cool texture here. I'm using this really expensive material here to do this. It's the bag that my paints came in from Michaels. It's literally just a piece of trash. And I'm just putting a little bit of paint on it and dabbing it on very slowly. It's very fast here, so you don't have to watch me do a million years of this, but it's all I'm doing. And that'll give this a kind of a dappled texture, kind of like, you know, like it's been in the sea and it's kind of, I don't know, octopusy. Like I said, it's a really simple technique. You don't need a lot. It's kind of almost like dry brushing if you've ever done that. And then I'm going to come in with an airbrush and just kind of airbrush that same color just really gently over it, just to kind of smooth it out just a little. So now I'm dry brushing in a translucent yellow here. This was a bad move. I should have airbrushed this, and I will be airbrushing this later, so you can probably skip this step. But I left it in here just to show, yeah, you can paint this if you don't own an airbrush. It's just going to take a lot more time because these layers are a lot thicker and they take longer to dry. Eventually I just went in with this airbrush. Now, what's really nice about the translucent paint is A, it's going to need a lot of coats, which sucks, but it allows that fade really nice. So you're not going to get like a really hard line of just yellow to red. You're going to get kind of some of the oranges in the area. Now, I've got my PSI turned down a little bit here, and so that way it's not putting quite out as much paint, but it's easier to control. Now here I don't have the PSI down, and you can see how wet this is getting so quickly and how much overspray I'm getting. So I thinned my paint out after I let this dry and turned down my PSI a lot. And I'm just kind of going in with a darker color in the eye sockets and under the cheeks, in those hollow spots behind the eyes, that kind of thing. And I'm just using my Vidal Sassoon 1970s portable hairdryer between layers. And I'm just kind of building up those dark colors and moving this around. If you use sticks like that, be careful you don't scratch the paint at the top. It's very delicate. And I'm just kind of like building it up darker and darker. And I'm going back in and I'm using a little bit whiter paint than the skull was based with to put the teeth on, and it's kind of like a gloss. It'll just make them pop a little. I'm also using the palm of my hand here a lot because I probably have paint on the tips of my fingers. I should be wearing gloves, but I just haven't ordered any yet. Alright, I'm doing another coat on that yellow. It took a lot of coats. So it took a lot of coats. So don't get discouraged, especially if using a translucent paint over a darker color. And now I'm just going ahead and I'm putting in a gloss varnish I got at Napa Auto Parts. You could probably get it on Amazon or Michaels or Home Depot. And here I'm using something really similar, but only does a matte finish to give a real nice contrast. As you can see, here's those details I promised with the beautiful dappling, just barely visible, but just enough to give it texture. And you can see that fade of that red into that yellow there. It's just exactly what I was hoping for. We have a really nice type of fade as well on the skull, and you can really see the difference between that matte finish now of the skull and the gloss of the tentacles to make them look slimy. Now, I really love this piece. It can be used by itself as a piece of art, or as a phone holder in several different orientations. It's really up to you and how you want to use it. It should work fine with both Android phones and iOS phones. It might even fit a small tablet. It's up to you to try. I really want to thank you guys for watching all the way to the end. It does great things for my analytics. As always, the STL files are linked below on Thingiverse, and if you could go ahead and give it a thumbs up there, just so that we can get to the front page and everybody can see this amazing piece of art, as well as posting your build photos so I can see all the cool things you've done with this design, that would be great. If you're not already subscribed, now is a great time, and I'll see you again next time on Filament's Folly.